Hello. Hi, my friends. How are you? I'm so glad you are joining me. This is my last Michael's class. I'm so sad, but it's so special because you are my last class that I'm going to be teaching. I have taught with Michael's for one full year. So for once a week for a whole year, just about, I have you have joined me in classes. So I'm so excited. I had the best time, but also I'm so sad. You can go back to YouTube, to Michael's YouTube, and you can see all of the other classes that I taught. They're all there. We've got some really cool classes from clay to jewelry to paper crafts and painting. So many fun classes. So make sure you go back and find those. And then follow me, have your adult follow me on Instagram at la_cozy_casita. And Nicole is going to put all of that in the comments. And that way we can keep in touch. Okay. So hopefully I'll be able to do a little something with Michael's here and there. We'll see. But for now, it's the end. Okay. But that's okay. I know it's not forever. Okay, so let's get our supplies. Today, we are going to be making this adorable pool scene. So I'm going to flip my camera around so you can see it. There we go. Okay, isn't this cute? It's a pool on a patio, for ducky and some chairs and an umbrella. So that is what we're going to be making. This is where you can share with us your super cool pool scene. I love to reshare that on Instagram. So if you want to have your adult follow us at Learn with Michaels. And here I am again at la_cozy_casita. So we can see, we can't see your faces right now. So this is a great way for us to see and communicate with you, is show us your picture. And also you can use these hashtags, but even better is, would you let us know in the Q&A what your name is, where you're from, and how old you are. Oh my gosh, I love that some of you have already wrote in the comments. That makes my heart so happy. It's like you already know what I'm gonna ask. See, oh, you're gonna make me cry. Okay, Nicole, so we have some cool shout outs that we'll give in a little bit. Nicole is the reader extraordinaire, so she's gonna read those out for me and make my whole heart so happy. Okay, so we are going to use our Michael's little tools for clay. If you don't have these, Kuna Matata, you can use what you've got around your house. So you could use a water bottle. You could use, look at this. This glue stick is like,
Elizabeth, I cannot see you at the moment.
well, changed. I don't know what just happened.
I'm not sure. That was unusual.
That sure was. Did you lose it too? Or just I left?
Everything kind of weirded out for a second, but I think we're back now.
Okay. Wow. Well, hey, Nicole, we're pretty lucky if that's the first time that ever happened. Let's just
Yeah,
pray that
true.
doesn't happen again.
You're starting to fade out on me again. All right, Elizabeth, are you back? Sorry, friends. It appears we're having some technical difficulties. Just bear with us for a moment, okay? Elizabeth, are you back?
I am, but I'm not sure what's going on.
I'm not sure either.
I apologize. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Hopefully, if it drops again, I'm going to completely reboot my computer. This is odd that this keeps happening.
It
Huh,
is very odd.
it has not happened ever before. Okay. Here we go, guys. All right. If it happens again, what I want you to do is I want you to open up your air dried clay and I want you to start warming it up. Okay. So you're going to warm it up. And I will also tell you if this happens, we'll do it one more time. If it drops again, what I'm going to do is record it and I can probably give that to Michael's, don't you think,
I think we could
Nicole?
do that. I will contact somebody and we'll see what we can do.
Okay. So okay. All right. So the colors that you are going to warm up, you're going to warm up your purple, warm up your brown, and start kneading it. Okay. We're going to make a teal. And so, or you could make this green. I just made a teal and I think I just mixed just a couple of colors. We're going to need our pink, white, green, just a tiny bit of blue. You can see I use a lot of colors. Well, just about every color, guys, but we're going to start by kneading our brown. All right. So sorry about that, guys. Hopefully that's the end. And let's go ahead. Our brown is going to be our patio. And so this is what I mean by kneading. You're going to go like this, stretch and bring it back together. Stretch and back. Just like this. So it's a little bit wet. I love this air dry clay. So it feels kind of wet and it's like really, really light. Really light. And especially when it dries. Okay, so this one is good. Okay, I'm going to clear off my space here. I have a little mat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll out my patio. You see, I have little bricks on this patio. So I'm going to push down. Ooh, I forgot. Hopefully that all those glitches gave you enough time to gather your materials, guys, because we just jumped right into it, didn't we? All right, I'm going to grab my rolling pin. I'm going to tell you something else that's a really cool tool. So if you can find one or have your adult help you, grab a clear lid. I love this, using a clear lid, like a takeout container. This came from an office supply sorter where it had like paper clips and clips in, because we're going to flatten out some things. And sometimes it's nice to just be able to see right through it. Now, if your parents are old enough for CDs, CD covers are amazing for that. So I'm rolling out just like this, making my patio. And I have this little mat here that is keeping my clay or my dough from sticking, my clay. Kind of like that. Now this does not have to be a perfect circle. I'm just kind of just rolling it out back and forth, back and forth. There we go. And I want it nice and big to fit my pool. Isn't that cute? Now, I wonder if any of you have taken my mini foods class. I love those. Those are my favorite. I did a mini fall foods. It was so fun. We made apple cider or hot cocoa, a tiny little mug with a tiny little marshmallow. It was so cute. We made a candy apple. That was so fun. We made, what else did we make? Oh, a s'more. It was so cute. And then we did a winter scene that was super fun. Okay, so that is good. So mine is about the size of my hand. Your hands are probably much, much, much smaller than mine. So just make it a little bit bigger. Well, you'll just make your pool a little smaller then, I guess. Okay, so there's my patio. Now I'm going to make the bricks on my patio. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to just lightly, ever so lightly, don't cut all the way through. You're barely, barely, barely pushing down. So light. I'm just going to make lines. Now, if you want to use a ruler just to make sure you're making straight lines, you can certainly do that, but you don't have to. Just the slightest. Just move it over a little. Back and forth. Be careful not to cut all the way through. You're just making, the word is called an indention. Indention. That's a big word, but it just means you're putting a light little groove. Just barely pushing. If you push too hard, you're going to cut all the way through it. And if you cut all the way through it on accident, all you have to do is put the two pieces together and use your fingers to push down just a little bit and you'll mend it. But if you can't get it together, just roll it back out again. No big deal. That's the great thing about using air dry clay, is you can start over if you make a mistake. And that is super, super nice. So what we're doing is making our bricks on our patio or our stones. Do you guys have a pool? Anybody have a pool in their house? At their house? Not in their house. Well, I suppose somebody could have a pool in their house. Then you're fancy, Nancy. Okay. So now that I have all those, and it's probably hard to see, but I'm going to zoom in. Look, it looks like a tortilla. Okay, now that I have all of those, all I'm going to do, and if you can't see them all the way, just push a little harder. You got to find the sweet spot. Not too hard, not too soft, but just like Goldilocks said, just right. Okay, now that we do that, now See, I can use my whole ruler all the way across too. That's a quick way. Now I'm going to use this tool. And if you don't have this tool, you can find something around your house. You could use an old card. You could use a pencil. You could use a skewer. You could use a popsicle stick. And so what we're doing is we're making the actual brick lines. So I'm just going to go like this. And now, since I'm going to make every other one, I'm going to go in between. See? So right here in between is where I'm going to make my next indentation, right here. And right here again. And right here. See that? So it's going to start to look like bricks or pavers. I'm going between these two lines. Now go between again and just stay in that row. So now I'm looking at this row and I'm doing the same thing. Go between the two lines. Whoop. See, you can see right there, I cut all the way through. So no big deal. Just patch it together with your fingers. There you go. You could also use a skewer if you wanted to. You're just making these lines in between. Isn't that cool, guys? So that's a good way to make bricks. And then you come back here like this. If your bricks disappear, just go back with your tool and press down again. Okay, this is a great time for shout outs. If
I
you
was
still
just
have them,
about to
Nicole.
ask.
Perfect.
So, I will start from the beginning. I did lose some in our glitch, so
Oh
if
no.
any of you would be willing to resend, that would be wonderful. I
Oh,
remember a
please
couple of
do.
them. I know Lindsay said that she's from, I believe, Buffalo, and that she was sad to see you go.
Oh.
Um, and Rose said, I'm 6 years old and I'm from Florida, and I'm sad this is your last time.
Oh.
Emma
Thanks.
said that she really loved your foods clay class, so she was excited for this class as well.
Oh,
And
great.
she
That
made
was a
her
fun class.
patio white.
Ooh, beautiful.
And then we have Sophie, who's 6 and from Toronto, who's also joining us, excuse me, 6.5. And then we
Oh,
have
that's a big
Chloe.
deal in kid years, Nicole. Got to get that half in there.
It's true. It's true. I've been told that by many. We have Chloe, who's 10 from Wisconsin. And then we have Lily, who's 6 from Lake Elsinore, California, I think. And she said this is her third class and that she's very sad and she'll miss you.
Oh, thank you guys. I will miss you. Nicole is encouraging me to make my own YouTube channel, so I may have to do that. That's why have your adults find me on Instagram. That way, if I do make the YouTube channel, I will share it there. Y'all are so encouraging. Thank
We
you.
also have Jonah, who's 4.5 from California, first class.
Oh, hey, Jonah. I am so glad you're trying something new. Good for you, kiddo. Are you in preschool? We have at our school, we have pre-Kers, and because I'm a teacher during the day, and they can definitely do this kind of stuff. So that's cool that you're doing it too. Shut up. How did you guys make your pavers? Did you get them all done? If you didn't, just keep on working at it, okay? I'm going to gently pull up my paver so gently, so gently, because I don't want to stretch it out and I don't want to tear it. I did tear it just a tiny bit right there, so I went too fast. So go real slow. You might have your adult help you with this part because we've been pushing it down a lot and we want to be careful when we pull it up. So there we go, gently. So I'm going to set this aside to dry. Well, it's not going to completely dry, but I'm just going to set it aside. I'm going to put it over here because it's time to work on the pool part. So we're going to make this cool, whoopsies. Let me pull up my camera. There we go. We are going to make the pool. Okay. So I'm going to grab this color green and I'm going to add a little blue to it. So this is like the Kelly green or the grass green, because you can see there are two colors here. I'm going to grab this green and I'm trying to make a teal. Ooh, I love the feel of this brand new out of the package. So first I'm going to knead it. And if you're still working on your pavers, don't worry. You can watch. Oh, and don't forget that this is going to be on YouTube tomorrow. So if there's any part that you missed, you can always go back or you can make another one. Or if you just like watching this time around until you can get a chance to get to the store, you can do that too. That's super fun. Okay. All right. So now that this feels nice and smooth, I'm just pulling. Now that it feels nice and smooth, I think I can add a little bit of blue to it. So I'm going to grab this blue color. I'm going to open it up. Look at, it's like a little pillow in there. Let's watch the air come out. Okay, I'm going to grab a little bit of blue, just a teeny bit. Oh, about just a little, about the size of a pea. Let me go a little smaller. It's better to add a little and not too much, because once you add too much, you can't take it out. But if you add little by little, you can keep adding. So I'm going to put this into my green and I'm going to start kneading it like this. This is going to be the only color that we're going to mix up and blend. I think the other colors, we're just going to use the exact colors that we have. Ooh, it looks really green. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit of white to it because I want to calm it down a little and a little more blue. So let me add a little more blue. Look at how much more vibrant it made it. Okay, I've got some blue. Another pea size of a green pea, except it's a blue pea. Okay. Doesn't this feel cool? I love it. It's almost summer, guys. We have 5 Mondays left of school. How many Mondays do you have left of school? Do you know yet? I'm going to add a little white to this. Oh, let's see. How much white am I using here? About the size of a marshmallow, a mini marshmallow. That's my best kid measuring. How do you like that? Okay, looking good. And this one's faded just a little bit because I've had it out on my shelf and the sun has been coming in on it. Add a little more white. So you can play with this, guys. until you get the color that you like. Some pools are more green, some pools are more blue. You get the color that you like. There we go. It reminds me of kind of taffy or something. Of course, this is not taffy, but it reminds me when you go to the beach and you see them making taffy. Doesn't it? When they pull it, it's so cool. I'm going to try to make that one day. Look, I'm halfway there. I know how to pull it. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. I like this color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off some of my clay. So I have one ball that is bigger and one that is a little bit smaller. So this one's going to go all the way around, and this one's going to be nice and flat. So let's use my clear box to flatten out my pool. And if you guys have any questions for me, you can let Nicole know in the Q&A, and she can ask me if she doesn't know the answer. Well, she can ask me, even if she does know the answer, because I'm sure she does.
I don't have questions yet, but I do have a few more shout outs.
Ooh, let's hear.
So we have Clayton, who's 7, joining us from New York.
What? Oh, Clayton, I was just in New York. Just got back yesterday.
Ooh, that's exciting. Chloe says, I don't know, but my school year ends on the 30th of May.
Oh,
And
so close, Chloe. I think you have 4 Mondays. That's
and
exciting.
Ian says, I only have one more Monday, and then Ian's done.
Ian, where do you go to school? That's amazing. Are you homeschooled? Lucky ducky. That's awesome. I'm happy for you. It's gonna be summertime. Do you see me making a snake, guys? Start making your snake. Go ahead, Nicole.
That's everybody so far.
Okay.
So.
Wonderful. All right, so we're just making a really long snake. It really does look like a snake because it's greenish. Okay, so you can have your pool like this if you want, or you can shape it into like a kidney, like a little kidney bean. And so what you do is you just go, well, just make a little indentation like that, like a kind of like the letter C, a little bit. And what's cool about this is pools can be any shape. Really, I've seen lots of shapes of pools. We're going to make this one into a kidney bean, or you could leave it in a circle if you want. Okay, now it's almost like an S, you guys. See how it kind of goes around and around? So I'm going to start shaping it with my fingers here. Bring this. So this middle part goes in. And you just start shaping it. Mine was a little longer. So I think I'm going to cut down this a little bit because it's a little too chunky on this side. Ooh, that's kind of cool. You can make your, seriously, you can make your pool any shape you want it to be. But I'm kind of making mine in the shape of like a kidney bean, kind of. Okay. I think that's good. I'm going to flatten out the top a little. There we go. Okay, now my snake, I have to make sure it's long enough to go all the way around, which I can see that it's not yet. So I got to keep going. But what I'm going to do is come over here and I'm going to use both hands. And what I'm doing is I'm rolling and I'm pulling at the same time. So roll and gently roll out. And then that's how you kind of stretch it. Now, if it gets really thin on one side or another, then you just work the thicker parts. And rolling is the key, friends, okay? Rolling is the key to making sure you kind of get an even snake. So just keep going. And I'm a little thicker on this side, so roll. Okay, now let me just kind of go around here. Let's see. How am I doing? Oh, I can see I need a little more rolling. All right, I'm going to keep going. Wow, I can't believe, was it Ian has one more Monday left? I feel like a free man. So what do you have for summer plans, friends? Are you going on vacation? What are you going to be doing? Do tell. Who is working on swimming all by themselves? I always put my kids in swimming lessons at the beginning of the summer. So they can always look forward to that so that they can swim safely. But each summer was a little different. Sometimes they had their water wings. Sometimes they use rafts a little more. But now they can swim. Lucas is using flippers in swim class. He has to pass a swim test for the Boy Scouts, and it is a tough test to pass. So he's been making sure that he's got all of his endurance. That means that he can swim for a long time without stopping. So that's what he's been practicing, but he just discovered flippers and now he feels like he can soar through the water. All right, I wonder how we are now, guys. Gently gonna put it around. Yay! We made it. Okay, so we're gonna put it on top, not on the side, like on top, because I don't want it to be too thin. So I'm just putting it on the top here. And then right where it meets, I'm gonna cut it off. Boop. And then pinch it together. See that? Now gently push down because this air dry clay will stick. Ooh, it kind of looks like a heart too, guys. Kinda. And let me move it a little bit so it doesn't look too much like a heart. Cute. Okay. Let me grab my patio. Let's put it on the patio. So here's my patio. And you can see my patio came apart a tiny bit right here. So I'm just going to hide it with my pool. See, no one's going to know. There we go. Push it down a little. Push, push, push. Gently. Oh man, is it getting you in the summer spirit, guys? Summer spirit. I always wish I had a DJ on these classes. Nicole, cue summertime. Summer, summer, summertime.
I wish.
Okay, now, are you ready for the cute little rubber ducky? Let's make the rubber ducky. All right. Oh, hey, guys, I forgot to tell you, which we're still going to be using this, but it's kind of a good idea to close these a little bit so they don't dry out. I will be using white, but when you're done with the class, make sure you tape your bags so you can use them again, okay? They should be okay for class time though while we're creating, but just a little tip. Okay, let's get our yellow And we're going to make our rubber ducky. Of course, I don't need all of this yellow. I'm going to use
And
about
all
half.
this, we do have a few more shout outs.
Ooh, do tell. I'm going to be needing this.
All right. So we have Lily says, I do soccer and swimming in the summer.
Ooh,
Chloe says, I have summer school and I'm probably doing swimming league.
fun.
Sophie said, I don't like water in my eyes, so I don't really like swimming. I will go to Wonderland a lot. Emma said, I'm going on vacation with my family and we're going to the amusement park to ride roller coasters.
Whoa.
And Chloe also said, I'm making water in my pool by rolling out the blue really thin so it's almost transparent.
So cool. I love to hear what you guys are doing differently than what I have. That's so fun. I love to hear your creativity. Cool. You guys have some fun summer plans. Exciting. Hey guys, you're going to be shocked by how easy it is to make this rubber ducky. All right, we needed that yellow. We need a teeny tiny little piece of black because those are going to be the eyes. So remember how I said get a little pea size? That's what we need, the size of a pea. Do you guys like peas? I like peas. Yum, yum. Okay, so just a teeny tiny and do a teeny tiny little kneading. Set that aside. So we've got our yellow for the body. We've got our black for the eyes. And now I need, what do I need left? What do I have? You guessed it. We need orange for the beak. And guess what? A teeny, teeny, tiny bit too. But I need orange in my umbrella as well. So I'm going to grab a little more than a pea size. All right, need this. I'm going to move this umbrella in the picture here so you can see. Let me move it right here. Where could I put it? My patio's in the way. This one. Let me move this guy over so you can see everything that we're doing. There we go. All right, so I'm getting my orange nice and warmed up. Hi.
All right, we've got a few more shout outs if you'd like.
I would. I'm going to make 1 second. Just cut this in half, guys. You're going to make a ball and a snake. All right, let's hear those shout outs.
All right, so Lindsay says, hi, I like you plant flowers. Lily says, I'm making it my duck pink. It's my
Oh,
favorite color.
so
And yeah,
cute. What did you say about the flower? Oh, I like you plant flowers. Oh, oh, you're going to plant flowers this summer. Gotcha. And I like you too. And then, oh, cute duck. Pink is my favorite colors too. I love it. Oh, I went too far with my snake, guys. I was getting carried away there. Okay. Here we go. Oh, oh no, guys, I lost my little ducky. It's like that song on top of Old Smoky, on top of spaghetti, all covered with cheese. There sat my poor meatball when somebody sneezed and the meatball rolled off the table. That's what just happened to my Play-Doh. Okay, but I got it. My air dry clay. Okay, so I'm gonna make my snake. And I might have just a little too much. I think I do. Let's see. You guys know how to make a snake by now, right? Whoop, keep going. A little longer than you think, I guess. And then we're going to form it together into a circle. So there we go. There's our circle. Look, it looks like a donut. If you were making foods, you could make a donut like this right now. Okay, now we're going to use this part to make the duck's head. If you get a little clay on your yellow, just pick it out. No big. Sometimes you might have little crumbs left and that'll happen. So I'm going to make the circle here, and I'm going to put the circle right here on this seam. The seam is where I brought the snake together. So I'm going to set it right there. Can you see it starting to form into a duck, a rubber ducky? Okay, now I need the tiniest bit of orange, and I'm just forming it with my fingers. So I've got my two fingers like this. Do you see the triangle of my fingers? And then I'm just going to push the end with my other finger. That's how you make a triangle. Check it out. And that's how you make a beak, my friends. So I'm going to put that at the end of his little head. Oh, he's so cute. Okay, now I need to make the eyes. So this is the tricky part. You have to make sure the eyes are the same size. So it's tricky when they're so tiny. Okay, let's see. How'd we do? Not too shabby. This guy's a little bigger. So I'm just going to pinch off the tiniest bit. All right. There we go. Okay, so now I have to connect these eyes, attach the eyes. There's one. And here's the other. And just gently, gently, gently add them there. See that? Okay. There we go. And now I'm going to add this right next to my pool. Are you guys ready to, or you could even put it in your pool. Isn't that cute? Okay. So, now we're going to work on the lawn chairs. So grab your purple. Open it up. And we're going to warm this up. We only need about half of the package. Just get half of that out. Get back in. I'm done with this yellow. I'm just going to throw that part away. Okay, so start kneading this. Just like this. Okay. Go ahead and start kneading it.
Elizabeth, I have a couple more shout outs.
Okay.
So Tiffany says, in summer, I like to do volleyball. And then
I
Emma said,
love
oh,
volleyball. I played volleyball in high school. It's so fun.
and then Emma said, I put my duck in a pool.
Twins, Emma. We're ready to go, aren't we? We're ready to get right in the pool. So cute. All right. This feels nice and warmed up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a ball. Just like this. And then press it down. Press. Okay. Now, oh my goodness, I hope you can't hear my neighbor outside shouting. He's pretend crying. Very loud, right outside my window. Okay. Now I've got that like a pancake. All right. And we are going to cut this. You're never going to believe it, but we're going to make a rectangle. Let me make it just a little bigger. Because we're going to make 2 rectangles. Okay. So Gonna make my swings here, or my chairs. You could make swings, that'd be fun. Boop, boop. See? Little off the top, little off the bottom. And now I'm going to cut. So really, I'm just trying to make one straight rectangle, like a chunky rectangle, because out of this rectangle, so I had a circle and I just cut off each end, each side to give myself a rectangle. So now with this rectangle, I'm going to cut it right in half. Try to be even Steven. Doop. And now you're going to just fold these like this. And that's what's going to make those patio chairs. I may have gone a little too thin. Hey, what did I say about if you make a mistake, guys? Just do it over. I'm going to add a little more because my patio chairs are a little thicker. See how my patio chairs are? I may not have added then enough dough. So let's go ahead and go for the whole kit and caboodle. We won't need all of it, but let's go ahead and use it because I went a little too thin that time. All right, this will be better. Okay, so I've got my circle. And I'm gonna press it out. Okay, ready? Make sure to go a little thicker this time because we want them to be able to stand up. Okay, that's pretty good. Now I'm going to use so in case you missed it the first time, I'm trying to make a rectangle. So I cut off the right. Now cut off the left. Now cut off the top. Now cut off the bottom. Ta-da! Now I'm going to go right through the middle. Whoa, that was so satisfying. Okay, now that's so much better. Now I'm going to fold it. Oh, so much more comfy. Wouldn't you rather sit in a comfy chair than a thin chair? Beautiful. So I'm going to put this one right next to the other so I can make the same chair. There we go. Okay. Oh, guys, we're rocking and rolling. All right, we're going to put one chair here. And let me move this up so you can see. Gently. Gently. Okay, can you see? I think instead of moving it so much, I'll just move my mat. Yeah, it came apart just a touch, so I'm gonna, okay, there's one. Here's my other patio chair. Cute. Are yours looking cute? What color did you make your patio chairs? Okay, ready for the umbrella. Okay, this is what we're gonna do for the umbrella. We are going to, this is the easiest part, you guys. Well, maybe not the easiest, but you're gonna get all of the colors. I've got orange, I've got yellow, I've got green. I'm not going to use black. And I'm getting all equal parts because we're going to be making the triangles. All of those are going to be triangles. Okay. To make the umbrella, there's some white. Here's some blue. I didn't even have blue in mine. Here's some purple. Oh, let's see. I love this pink. Okay, I'm going to open this pink, guys. You could just use what you've got open. But I really like this pink, so I'm going to use a little bit of pink because like one of our friends said, I'm not sure which friend, pink is her favorite color. Pink is my favorite color too. So I've got to add some pink. Okay, guys, you ready, Freddies? We are going to make little pizzas. So oops, I'm out of frame. Press it. And make a triangle. press it. You're going to cut a triangle. So, boop. This one you can go all the way down. And come across like that. So you're just going to make little triangles and you just kind of try to make them all about the same size. But it doesn't matter if it's not perfect because you're going to be able to mold them together a little better. So make your circle. You can use your clear lid if you want, or you can just make your little round ball with your hands. Then press it out. Try to make it the same thickness as your first triangle. And here we go. So have your first triangle handy so you will know about the size that you want to make it. There we go. All right, now let's do yellow. Push. Triangle. Let me grab these guys over again because I want to, so you can see I made that one a little thinner. It's okay. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect, you guys. Well, I do want to make it a little, I made this one a little too thin. The joy of dough, you get to do it over and over again. There we go. I didn't push so hard this time. And do you see? Do you see our umbrella starting to come together? Now the purple. And push. And make your triangles. Cut off the extra edge. It's almost better if you line it up, isn't it? All right, here's blue. Blue needs to be kneaded just a touch more. Let's go orange. Just because that blue next to the purple, I want to brighten it up a little. So let's brighten it up with an orange. But if you want to put a blue right next to your purple, you have at it. It's your project. You can have it however you want. You are the boss of your own project. So we're just making all these little pizzas, all these little pizza slices. And it's turning into a beautiful umbrella. All right, let's push this one down. We're almost there, kiddos. Boop, boop. Ooh, I love the pink.
We have a couple more shout outs.
Let's hear it.
So Chloe said, I made my duck into a real duck.
Oh, cute. That's a good idea.
And Lily said, I made my chairs purple.
Love it. Twinning. Oh, I already did green, didn't I? I love that you made it into a real duck. That's so cute. Okay, last one. Okay. Push. And boop. All right. Can you see our umbrella? All right, there we go. So that's the last piece. So now, isn't that cool? Okay, so now I'm just gonna kind of push it down. You could even gently, so gently roll it to kind of let those blend together a little bit. That way they'll stick together so gently, my friends, so gently. Okay. There we go. Now I'm going to grab a white ball and put it right in the middle there. Okay. Now I'm going to get a pink ball, and you can do whatever color you want. Like I said, I like that pink color, so that's kind of why I'm doing it. Choose your favorite color. And we're going to make the bottom of the stand. Oh, I forgot to have you guys grab a skewer. If you have a skewer, grab a skewer. If you don't have a skewer, use a toothpick. If you don't have a toothpick, you could use a pencil. If you don't have a pencil, you can just make another snake. It'll be hard to hold it up, though, is the thing, because we are making this part right here. I think with us going out of the Zoom dropped us, so that's what got me off flabbergasted. Okay, so I'm gonna snap this. Have your adult snap it for you, because I don't want you to get a splinter. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stick the bottom of my skewer right in that ball, and then just set it gently on my patio. Now, ever so gently, you're gonna grab your umbrella. Make sure, I'm just gonna gently kind of make sure all of the colors are joined together, because once, see, it's flat like this, but once I bring it together, I don't want them to separate. Ooh, look at how pretty it looks on that side. Okay. So now I'm going to set that on top of that skewer and just push on that little kind of marshmallow looking thing you have up there. Now this, just kind of have to hold for a second. Make sure that hole on the bottom, let me come in the frame a little more, doesn't get too loose. There we go. There's your umbrella. Bring it down just a bit. And there's our cute little summer scene. Just leave it there, friends. I'm pulling mine up a little bit. Oh, I'm scared to pull it up. I don't want to pull it up. Okay, just leave it there. I'm just going to turn mine so you can see. Full kit and caboodle. See that? I'm turning. I'm turning. Get the You can even, just like when you're at the beach, you need to add some sand around an umbrella because it's top heavy. That's what you can do here. So you can see this one stayed, but I do remember holding it for a little bit. So I'm going to hold it for a little bit. And I'm going to switch my camera on. Ooh, guys, don't forget, your adults can come find me on Instagram at La Cozy Casita. I'm Elizabeth Barrick everywhere else. TikTok. We'll see what I'll be if I open my YouTube page channel. Okay, let me see. Did we have any other questions? Okay, let's see.
We have a
So
couple last
cute. Tina,
comments.
I'm here for your emojis. What did you say, Nicole?
Oh, I said we had a couple last, which you saw Tina's, and then Clayton also chimed in that he added an Angry Bird to his.
Clayton, you're so creative. What a fun idea. I love it. Okay, you guys, you made my heart so so happy. I love teaching you. I love teaching these classes. I love when you leave comments and we can shout you out. It just makes it so much more fun. I have to admit, when I first started teaching these classes, I thought, oh man, is it going to be so awkward because I can't see the kids? But you all have made it so much fun when you're active in the Q&A so that I can then know what you're thinking, know what you're making. It's so fun for me. So thank you so much for using that Q&A and making these classes come alive. I really have been so thankful for this opportunity. I have had the best time, and I hope that your adults will follow me on my other pages so we can keep in touch. And please add your pictures of your summer scene. I hope you guys have a fantastic, fantastic summer. Thank you for joining me. It's been the absolute best time. All right, my friends, you have a great night. Bye.